Millionaire CEO gave a black credit card to test the homeless girl on the street. What she did next. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get into today's story. A millionaire CEO gave a black credit card to test a homeless girl on the street. What she did next will leave you in awe. Let's meet our main character, Emma. Emma Brooks sat on the cold sidewalk of New York City, huddled under a thin blanket as the wind whipped through the streets. The night air was crisp, but the sting of it felt like nothing compared to the deep exhaustion in her bones. She had been out on the streets for weeks now, unable to catch a break. A string of unfortunate events had left her jobless, without a home, and worse, without any hope of things turning around anytime soon. She clutched the last few crumpled dollars in her pocket, enough to buy a sandwich, but not much else. As the traffic whizzed by, she felt invisible, unnoticed by the world around her. Her only company was the distant hum of city life and the occasional passerby who would glance at her before quickly looking away. Emma wasn't used to this kind of life. Once, she had dreams of becoming an artist, of opening her own little gallery one day. But that seemed like a distant memory now. Life had a way of knocking her down, and every time she stood up, the ground seemed to slip right out from under her. Her stomach growled, reminding her that she hadn't eaten in hours. She sighed and hugged her knees to her chest. She would have to make the best of it tonight, like she did every night. Just survive. As she sat there, lost in her thoughts, a sleek black car pulled up to the curb. The door swung open, and a man in a sharp suit stepped out. He looked out of place on this street, too polished, too perfect for the rough city corner where Emma sat. He noticed her instantly, but instead of walking past like everyone else, he paused and approached her. "Hey, are you all right?" he asked, his voice smooth, almost too polite. Emma looked up at him, confused. She was used to people ignoring her, not stopping to check if she was okay. She hesitated before answering. "I'm fine," she said, her voice barely a whisper. The man looked at her for a moment longer, his gaze lingering, as if deciding something in his mind. Then, without warning, he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a black credit card. "Take this," he said, holding the card out to her. "It's unlimited. Buy whatever you need." Emma's eyes widened. She had no idea what to say. This man, a stranger, was offering her a black credit card, one that she knew was for the wealthy, the elite. It didn't make sense. People like him didn't give anything to people like her. She shook her head slowly. "I can't take that," she said, her voice filled with disbelief. "Why would you? It's just a test," he interrupted, his voice cool but kind. "I want to see if you'll take advantage of it." He paused, watching her closely. "Take it or don't. But I'll be watching to see what you do." Emma stared at the card in his hand, her mind racing. It seemed like a dream, like some bizarre trick. But she couldn't shake the feeling that this man, with his perfect suit and too polished demeanor, wasn't here to help. He was here to test her, and that thought made her even more hesitant. "I don't want your money," she said firmly, finally pushing herself to her feet. "I don't want anything from you." The man didn't seem surprised, just thoughtful. He nodded once, as if he'd expected this response. "All right," he said, "but if you change your mind, I'll be around." And with that, he turned and walked back to his car, leaving Emma standing there, still holding on to the last few crumpled dollars she had left. For a moment, she just stared after him, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Who was that man? And why had he offered her something so outrageous? She didn't have the answers, but she did know one thing. She wasn't going to take his card. She wasn't going to let anyone test her like that. She had her pride, even if it was all she had left. Little did Emma know, this strange encounter was just the beginning of a life-changing journey. One that would challenge her, change her, and show her what it truly meant to be tested. But for now, Emma simply tucked her head down and moved toward the corner store, hoping to find enough change to buy a warm meal. She wasn't sure where her life was going, but she knew she wasn't giving up. Not yet. She couldn't. And as she walked away, the man in the suit watched from the shadows, silently impressed by her decision. What he didn't know was that this was just the start of something that would alter both of their lives forever. It had been a few days since Emma's encounter with the man in the sharp suit. She couldn't stop thinking about the strange offer he had made, but life, as it always did, moved on. Emma was back to her routine, trying to scrape together enough for a meal, trying to survive another day on the cold streets of New York City. She wasn't used to anyone caring about her or offering her help without expecting something in return. The card, the offer, the test, it all felt too surreal to take seriously. But still, she couldn't shake the thought that something had shifted in her. Maybe it was his words. Maybe it was the fact that someone had actually seen her for the first time in weeks. The next morning, as Emma sat in the small coffee shop she had been frequenting for the past few days, trying to warm her hands around a small cup of coffee, she spotted the man again. He was standing outside the window, looking in at her. But this time, there was no car, no sharp suit. He was just a man in a jacket, standing across the street, watching her. Emma's heart skipped a beat. She wasn't sure what to do. She had ignored him before, but now, it felt different. He wasn't offering her anything. He was just waiting. Slowly, she stood up, pushing the door open to step outside. "Hi," she said, her voice more nervous than she wanted it to be. The man looked at her, his expression unreadable. "Hello, Emma," he said, his voice calm. "I'm glad to see you're all right." She nodded, still unsure of his intentions. "What do you want from me?" she asked, her tone defensive. He didn't seem bothered by her question. Instead, he looked thoughtful for a moment before replying. "Nothing," he said simply. "I wanted to check in. You didn't take the card, which tells me something about you." Emma frowned. "What does that mean?" she asked, confused. "It means you have pride," he said. "I respect that. Not everyone would turn down an offer like that." She stared at him, unsure of what to say. "So what now?" she asked. "You're still here. You didn't just disappear after giving me that ridiculous offer." The man paused, looking at her with a mix of curiosity and something else, maybe admiration. "I wasn't sure what to expect," he admitted. "But you surprised me." He hesitated before continuing. "I want to help you, Emma. I know that's hard to believe, but I have a job offer for you. It's not much, but it's a start. And if you want, I can help you get back on your feet." Emma stared at him in disbelief. Was this real? Was he serious? "Why?" she asked, unable to hide the skepticism in her voice. "Why would you do this for me?" He gave her a small smile, one that didn't reach his eyes. "Because I've seen enough to know that you deserve more than what life has given you so far." Emma was quiet for a long moment, processing his words. She had never been the kind of person to ask for help, and yet here she was, standing in front of a man who had offered her everything, without her asking for a thing. "I don't know," she said finally. "I don't know if I'm ready for that kind of help. I've been on my own for so long." The man nodded, as if he understood exactly how she felt. "I get it," he said gently. "But sometimes, we need a little push. A chance." He pulled something out of his pocket, his business card. "Call me when you're ready, Emma. No pressure. Just think about it." And with that, he turned and walked away, leaving Emma standing there with his card in her hand, still unsure of what to make of it all. Over the next few days, Emma found herself thinking about him more and more. She couldn't deny that his offer had stirred something inside of her. She had always prided herself on her independence, but maybe she wasn't as strong as she thought. Maybe it was time to let someone in. She found herself back at the coffee shop the next morning, sitting by the window, staring out at the bustling street. The city felt so alive, so full of possibility, but it also felt so far away from her. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, and when she checked it, she saw a message from an unknown number. It was the man. "I just wanted to remind you that the offer still stands," the text read. "No pressure. Just take your time." Emma's heart skipped a beat. She had expected to forget about him, to go back to her routine and never think about that strange encounter again. But something in his message made her pause. Maybe she wasn't as alone as she thought. Maybe it was time to take a leap of faith, to trust in someone else for once. Emma looked out the window, watching the busy world go by, and for the first time in a long while, she felt like maybe, just maybe, there was hope for her yet. It had been a week since Emma received the man's business card, and despite herself, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was shifting in her life. She had spent days wrestling with the decision, turning his offer over in her mind like a broken record. Was it the right choice? Was she ready to accept help? Could she trust him? These questions echoed in her thoughts, drowning out the steady hum of city life around her. Emma sat alone in the same coffee shop she'd been visiting for the past few days, nursing a lukewarm cup of coffee. The place was warm, a small haven from the cold, yet she still felt out of place. She had gotten used to living on the edge, her days a blur of survival and uncertainty. But now, she couldn't ignore the pull of the opportunity the man had offered her, the promise of something more, something better. The decision was gnawing at her, tugging at the very core of her being. She glanced at the business card again, now worn at the edges from being handled so many times. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she made up her mind. She would call him. It wasn't easy, admitting that she needed help, admitting that she didn't have it all together, but the thought of staying in this endless cycle of survival was unbearable. She dialed the number. It rang once, twice, before a calm voice answered on the other end. "Hello, Emma," the man said. "I was wondering when you'd call." His tone was warm, but there was a hint of something else in it, something almost hopeful. "I've been thinking about your offer," she said, her voice steady but unsure. "And I want to take you up on it. I think I'm ready for a change." There was a brief pause on the other end. "I'm glad to hear that," he said, his voice filled with sincerity. "Let's meet. How about tomorrow afternoon? We'll go over the details then." Emma agreed, and they set the time and place. The next day, she walked to the cafe where they had agreed to meet, her heart pounding in her chest. This was it. She was about to take a huge leap of faith. When she arrived, the man was already there, sitting at a table in the corner, a small, knowing smile on his face as he saw her approach. "Emma," he greeted her as she sat down. "I'm glad you came. I know this isn't easy, but I believe it's the right decision." She nodded, her hands trembling slightly as she placed them on the table. I don't know what to expect, but I'm willing to trust you." He looked at her, his expression softening. "You don't need to worry. This is about your future. I want to give you a chance to start fresh." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. "I've arranged for a position at my company. It's not glamorous, but it's a start. You'll have an income, a place to stay, and a chance to build your life again." Emma's breath caught in her throat. It felt surreal, as though the weight of her struggles might finally be lifting. "You're offering me a job?" she asked, disbelief in her voice. "Yes," he replied, "and I'll be there to guide you every step of the way. You'll have a mentor, someone to help you adjust, and you won't be alone in this." Emma could hardly believe what she was hearing. It was more than she had ever hoped for, more than she had ever thought possible. But a part of her still hesitated. "What's the catch?" she asked, her voice tinged with suspicion. "There's no catch," he assured her. "I'm offering this because I see something in you, something that's worth investing in." His eyes locked onto hers, and for a moment, she felt like he truly saw her, saw beyond the surface, beyond the circumstances. "All I ask is that you give it your best shot. You deserve better, Emma. You deserve a life that isn't about just getting by." Her chest tightened as his words settled in her heart. She had spent so long fighting to survive, but maybe, just maybe, she could learn to live again. "Okay," she said, her voice steady now, filled with newfound determination. "I'll do it. I'll take the chance." A smile spread across his face, and for the first time in what felt like ages, Emma smiled back. "Good," he said. "We'll start tomorrow. I'll have everything set up for you." As she left the cafe, Emma felt a strange mix of emotions: relief, fear, hope. She wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time, she felt like she might actually have a future. A future that wasn't defined by her past, but by the choices she was making now. And as she walked down the bustling streets of the city, she couldn't help but feel that maybe, just maybe, her life was about to change forever. The next morning, Emma stood in front of the glass doors of the office building, her heart pounding in her chest. She could hardly believe she was here, ready to start a new chapter of her life. A chapter that she had never imagined would happen to someone like her. As she stepped inside, the sleek, modern design of the lobby overwhelmed her, the polished floors and high ceilings making her feel both small and out of place. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself as she approached the receptionist. "I'm here to see Mr. Parker," she said, her voice wavering slightly. The receptionist looked up from her desk, smiling warmly as she motioned to the elevator. "He's expecting you. Take the elevator to the 14th floor, and it's the first door on the right." Emma nodded, forcing a smile, and stepped into the elevator. As the doors closed, She tried to calm her racing thoughts. What was she doing here? Was she really ready for this? She had spent so long struggling on her own, trying to survive, and now she was about to walk into the world of the very people she had once felt so distant from. The elevator dinged, and Emma stepped out onto the 14th floor. The office was everything she had imagined, luxurious, modern, and intimidating. But at the same time, it felt strangely welcoming. She walked toward the first door on the right and knocked softly. "Come in," a familiar voice called from inside. She opened the door and stepped into the office, where Mr. Parker was sitting at his desk, looking up with a smile. "Emma, I'm glad you made it," he said, standing up to greet her. She smiled nervously, feeling both out of place and incredibly grateful. "Thank you for this opportunity," she said, her voice soft but sincere. "I don't know how to thank you for everything you've done." He waved it off with a casual gesture. "No need for thanks," he said. "This is just the beginning. You've earned this. I'm glad you're here." He motioned to a chair across from his desk, and Emma sat down, still feeling the weight of the moment. "I know this is a big change," he continued, "but I want you to know that I'm here to help you every step of the way. You don't have to do this alone." Emma nodded, her eyes meeting his. For the first time in a long while, she felt like someone cared, like she wasn't invisible. "I'm ready," she said, her voice more confident now. "I'm ready to start over." Over the next few weeks, Emma settled into her new role at the company. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a start. A real, honest start. She worked hard, putting in long hours and learning everything she could. Every day felt like a challenge, but it also felt like she was slowly but surely getting closer to the life she had dreamed of. She had a job, a paycheck, and a place to stay, things she had never imagined she would have again. The hardest part was adjusting to the life she was now a part of. She had to learn how to navigate a world she had never been a part of before, meetings, business jargon, and social interactions that were all so new to her. But with Mr. Parker's guidance, she was slowly finding her footing. He checked in on her regularly, offering advice and encouragement when she needed it most. As the weeks went by, Emma's confidence grew. She started to believe in herself again, something she hadn't done in a long time. She realized that this wasn't just about getting by anymore. It was about building something real, something that would last. One afternoon, as she sat at her desk working on a project, she received a message from Mr. Parker. "Come to my office," it read. Emma's heart skipped a beat as she stood up and walked down the hallway to his office. She had no idea what to expect. When she entered, he was sitting at his desk, but this time, there was a different energy about him. He looked up at her with a warm smile. "I've been thinking," he began. "You've done an incredible job here, and I think you deserve a bigger opportunity." Emma's stomach fluttered with excitement. "What do you mean?" she asked, trying to hide the hope in her voice. "I want to offer you a promotion," he said. "You've shown great potential, and I think you're ready to take on more responsibility. It's not just about the job anymore. It's about your future." Emma's breath caught in her throat. A promotion? She had never expected something like this. She had come here just to survive, to escape the harsh reality of her life on the streets, and now, she was being offered something more, something she had only dreamed about. Thank you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know what to say. Just keep doing what you're doing," he said, standing up and extending his hand. "You've earned it." Emma shook his hand, a mix of emotions flooding through her. She had come so far in such a short amount of time, and now, the life she had once thought was impossible was starting to feel real. As she walked back to her desk, she couldn't help but smile to herself. This was just the beginning, and for the first time in a long time, she believed in herself again. She had taken a chance, and it had paid off. And for the first time, she was excited about what the future held. It had been several months since Emma had started working at the company, and in that time, everything had changed. She had worked hard, learned quickly, and earned the respect of her colleagues. Her days no longer felt like a constant struggle to survive. They were filled with purpose and opportunity. The promotion Mr. Parker had offered her had opened up new doors, and now she was part of a team that valued her contributions. Yet, despite all the progress, there was still something gnawing at her. She had come so far, but a part of her still couldn't believe this new life was real. She still struggled with the idea that someone as successful and polished as Mr. Parker believed in her, that he had given her the chance to build a future when no one else had. She sat at her desk one afternoon, working on a new project, when her phone buzzed. It was a message from Mr. Parker. "I'd like to talk to you in my office, when you have a moment." Emma felt a flutter in her chest. She had grown comfortable in her role, but the idea of meeting with Mr. Parker always made her a little nervous. She stood up, smoothed her blouse, and walked down the familiar hallway toward his office. When she entered, he was sitting behind his desk, looking over some papers. He looked up and smiled warmly when he saw her. "Emma, come in," he said, motioning to the chair across from him. "I just wanted to take a moment to talk to you about your progress here. You've been doing an outstanding job, and I couldn't be more pleased with the work you've been putting in." Emma smiled, feeling a sense of pride. "Thank you, Mr. Parker. I've really been trying my best." "I can tell," he said. "Your hard work hasn't gone unnoticed. In fact, I think it's time for the next step." Emma's heart skipped a beat. "Next step?" she asked, not sure if she was hearing him correctly. "Yes," he said, standing up and walking around his desk. "I've been thinking about your potential, Emma. You've proven yourself here, and I believe you're ready for something bigger. I want to offer you an even higher position, one with more responsibility, more leadership. It's a great opportunity for someone with your skills and drive." Emma felt a rush of emotions. A higher position? More responsibility? She had never imagined this for herself. She had come to this company just hoping to get by, but now, it seemed like the world was opening up to her in ways she hadn't expected. I don't know what to say," she said, her voice shaky. "Say yes," Mr. Parker said with a smile. "You've earned it. I'm confident you can handle it." Emma sat there for a moment, her mind racing. She thought about how far she had come, from the homeless woman on the street to now being offered a leadership role at a company she had once only dreamed of working for. It was hard to believe, but the truth was, she had worked for this moment, and it was hers to take. "Yes," she said finally, her voice filled with conviction. "I'm ready." Mr. Parker smiled, his eyes gleaming with pride. "I knew you would be. I'm excited to see what you'll do with this new role." As Emma left his office, she felt a sense of accomplishment that she had never known before. She had started this journey uncertain and afraid, but now, she felt strong. She felt like she could truly make a difference, not just in the company, but in her own life. She had been given a chance, and now, it was up to her to take full advantage of it. The next few weeks were a blur of meetings, new responsibilities, and a sense of growing confidence. Emma had been given a team to lead, and she approached it with the same determination that had gotten her this far. She worked tirelessly to learn the ropes, to connect with her team, and to prove that she was ready for this next step. Slowly but surely, she started to see the fruits of her labor. Her team respected her, and her confidence grew with each success. But it wasn't just about work anymore. Emma was starting to realize that her life was no longer defined by her past. She wasn't just surviving anymore, she was thriving. One evening, after a long day at the office, Emma walked to the park near her apartment. The sun was setting, and the sky was painted in shades of pink and orange. She paused for a moment, taking in the beauty of the scene. She had been so focused on work, on proving herself, that she had forgotten to stop and appreciate the small moments in life. As she stood there, watching the sunset, she felt a sense of peace settle over her. She had come a long way, but there was still so much more ahead. And for the first time in a long time, she felt truly hopeful about what the future held. Weeks passed, and Emma's life continued to change in ways she could never have imagined. Her new position at the company came with more responsibility, more challenges, and more opportunities to prove herself. Every day, she walked into the tall glass building with a quiet confidence that had grown from her struggles. She no longer saw herself as the girl who once sat on the cold streets of New York, wondering if life would ever give her a break. She was someone new now, someone capable, determined, and hopeful. Still, even with all her success, there was one person who remained a mystery to her, Mr. Parker. He had given her everything, the chance, the trust, the guidance, but there was always a distance between them. He was kind and supportive, yet reserved. He rarely talked about himself, and whenever she tried to ask about his personal life, he would change the subject. It was as if he was hiding behind a carefully built wall that no one could break through. One evening, after a long day at work, Emma stayed late to finish up a report. The office was quiet, the only sound the soft hum of the air conditioning. As she typed, She noticed the light from Mr. Parker's office still glowing through the glass walls. She hesitated for a moment, then decided to knock on his door. "Come in," he said, his voice calm as always. Emma stepped inside, holding her folder close to her chest. "I just wanted to drop off the quarterly report before I head out," she said. "And to thank you again for everything. I know I've said it before, but I wouldn't be here without you." Mr. Parker looked up from his computer and smiled, the corners of his eyes softening. "Emma, you don't have to keep thanking me," he said gently. "You earned this. You've done all the hard work." She smiled, but there was a question in her eyes. "Still, I wonder sometimes. Why me? You could have given this opportunity to anyone, but you chose a stranger from the street." "What?" For a moment, he said nothing. His gaze drifted toward the window, where the lights of the city shimmered against the night sky. "Because I was once like you," he said finally, his voice quieter than she had ever heard it. Emma blinked, not sure she had heard him right. "Like me?" He nodded slowly. "I grew up with nothing. I worked my way up from the bottom, and along the way, I forgot what it felt like to struggle. I became the kind of man who judged people by appearances, until one day, someone reminded me of who I used to be." Emma listened in silence, her heart tightening at his words. She had never imagined that beneath his composed and confident exterior was a man who had faced the same kind of hardships she had. "I gave you that card that day because I wanted to see what you would do," he continued. "I wanted to test whether kindness and integrity still existed in a world obsessed with wealth and power. And you proved to me that they do." Emma's eyes widened as she finally understood. "That was all a test?" she asked softly. "You were never just helping me out of pity?" Mr. Parker shook his head. "No, Emma. It was never about pity. It was about faith. I needed to see if there were still people who would choose dignity over desperation. You reminded me that wealth means nothing if it cannot be used to change lives." Emma felt a lump form in her throat. For so long, she had thought she was the one being tested, but now she realized that maybe, just maybe, he had been testing himself too. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "Say that you'll keep proving me right," he said with a faint smile. "Keep being the person who makes others believe in goodness again." There was a long pause as their eyes met. For the first time, Emma saw something different in him. Not just the confident CEO who had given her a chance, but a man who carried his own scars. "I will," she said finally, her voice steady. "I promise." He nodded, and the silence between them was filled with something unspoken. Trust, respect, maybe even something deeper. As Emma left his office that night, the city lights reflected on the glass walls, casting golden patterns across the floor. She walked out into the cool night air with her heart full. For the first time, she truly understood that this journey was about more than success. It was about redemption, about faith, about two people who had found each other at the exact moment they needed to be reminded that kindness still mattered. And as she looked up at the endless New York skyline, she smiled, knowing this was only the beginning of a story neither of them could have predicted. Weeks had passed since Emma had that conversation with Mr. Parker, and with each passing day, her life seemed to shift further away from the struggles she once faced. She had settled into her new role and was beginning to build her confidence. But as the days turned into weeks, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. She had grown close to her colleagues, had even made a few friends, but there was still a lingering sense of loneliness that kept her up at night. She had everything she could have asked for: a job, stability, respect. But there was something inside of her that longed for more, something she hadn't quite figured out yet. One night, after another long day at work, Emma found herself walking home, her mind racing. She had just finished a meeting with Mr. Parker, where he had praised her for her progress and hinted that she might be ready for an even bigger role in the company. It was exactly what she had worked for, but still, something didn't feel quite right. She passed by the familiar park on her way home, the one where she had stood months ago, staring out at the city lights and wondering if she would ever get out of the darkness. The park was quiet, the streets empty, and for the first time in a long time, Emma felt the weight of her past pressing down on her. She sat on a bench, the cold air nipping at her skin, and took a deep breath. What had changed? Why did she still feel incomplete? As she sat there, lost in thought, she heard a familiar voice. "Mind if I join you?" She looked up too. See Mr. Parker standing a few feet away, his hands tucked into his pockets, his expression unreadable. I didn't mean to intrude, he said, his tone softer than usual. I was just walking by and saw you sitting here. Emma hesitated for a moment, then nodded, gesturing for him to sit beside her. Of course, she said. I was just thinking. He sat down next to her, his gaze fixed on the skyline in front of them. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the faint rustle of leaves in the trees and the distant hum of traffic. Finally, Mr. Parker broke the silence. You've come a long way, Emma, he said quietly. I know you've worked hard to get here, and I'm proud of you. But I also know there's something weighing on you. I can see it in your eyes. Emma looked at him, surprised. How do you know? She asked, her voice soft. He glanced at her and smiled faintly. I know what it's like to feel like you're not enough, even when everything around you tells you that you are, he said. I've been there, and I think you're carrying something with you that you haven't let go of yet. Emma swallowed hard, feeling a lump form in her throat. She hadn't realized just how much she had been holding in. I don't know what's wrong with me, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I should be happy. I have everything I could have wanted. But I still feel empty, like something's missing. Mr. Parker was silent for a moment, as if choosing his words carefully. You've come so far, Emma, he said again. But you've been running from your past for so long, you haven't had the chance to confront it. You've been focused on surviving, but now it's time to start living, to find what really matters. Emma nodded slowly, her thoughts racing. She had spent so much time trying to outrun her past, trying to forget the girl who had lived on the streets, the girl who had been invisible to the world. But no matter how far she ran, that part of her was always there, lingering in the back of her mind. I don't know if I'm ready to face it, she said softly, her voice shaky. I don't know if I can go back to that place. Mr. Parker turned to her, his expression gentle. You don't have to do it alone, he said. You've built a life here, Emma, and you don't have to hide from who you were to be who you are now. It's okay to be both. She looked at him, unsure of what he meant. What do you mean? She asked. I mean that you don't have to keep your past buried, he explained. You've made it. You've fought hard to get here, and now it's time to let go of the weight you've been carrying. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be you. Emma took a deep breath, feeling a sense of relief wash over her. Maybe he was right. Maybe she didn't have to be ashamed of her past. Maybe it had shaped her, but it didn't have to define her. For the first time in a long time, she felt a flicker of hope. Thank you, she said quietly, looking at him. I don't know if I could have done this without you. He smiled warmly. You did it, Emma. I just gave you the chance to see it for yourself. As the night air grew colder, they sat in silence, watching the city lights flicker in the distance. Emma knew that her journey wasn't over, but for the first time, she felt ready to face whatever came next. The weight of her past didn't seem so heavy anymore, and the future felt full of possibilities. Maybe, just maybe, she was finally starting to live. The following months were nothing short of transformative for Emma. She had taken Mr. Parker's advice to heart, and slowly, she began to confront the parts of herself she had been running from. The weight of her past, once so heavy, started to feel more like a part of her story, an experience that had shaped her, but did not define her. She was still working at the company, thriving in her new role, but now she felt a deeper sense of purpose. Every morning, as she walked through the doors of the building, she no longer felt like an outsider. She wasn't the girl who had once been invisible on the streets. She was Emma Brooks, a confident and capable woman with a future ahead of her. One morning, after a particularly long meeting, Emma sat at her desk, reviewing some reports. As she looked out of the window, her thoughts wandered to Mr. Parker. She hadn't spoken with him as much lately, as he had been busy with his own projects. But she couldn't deny that she felt a sense of gratitude toward him. He had given her more than just a job. He had given her the confidence to rebuild her life. She had always admired him from afar, but now, she saw him in a different light. He wasn't just a successful CEO. He was a man who had seen something in her, who had helped her believe in herself when she couldn't. That evening, as she was leaving the office, she bumped into him in the hallway. Mr. Parker, she said, surprised to see him. I was just thinking about you. He smiled, his usual calm demeanor in place. Good things, I hope, he said, his eyes twinkling with a hint of humor. Emma smiled in return. Yes, good things. I've just been reflecting on how far I've come, and I wanted to thank you again. He looked at her for a long moment, his gaze thoughtful. You've done the hard work, Emma, he said. I just gave you the opportunity. But I'm glad to see you flourishing. Emma's heart warmed at his words. It means more than you know, she said quietly. You changed my life, Mr. Parker. You gave me a chance when I didn't think I deserved one. He nodded, his expression softening. You deserve every bit of success you've achieved, Emma. You've earned it. There was a brief silence between them, a quiet moment of understanding. Is everything okay? She asked, noticing the shift in his tone. He hesitated for a moment, his usual composure slipping just slightly. I'm fine, he said, but there was something in his voice that made Emma wonder. If you ever need someone to talk to, I'm here, she said, her voice sincere. He looked at her, as if weighing her words. For a moment, he didn't speak. Then finally he smiled, though it was tinged with sadness. Thank you, Emma, he said softly. Maybe I will take you up on that. Emma watched him walk away, her mind spinning. There was something more to Mr. Parker than he let on. She had seen glimpses of vulnerability in him, but it was clear he kept his personal life tightly guarded. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was a connection between them, one that had been formed not just through work, but through shared experiences. The next few weeks passed in a blur of meetings, projects, and a growing sense of belonging. Emma had earned the respect of her peers and her team, and now she was tasked with leading a new initiative for the company. She was more confident than ever before, but she still found herself thinking about Mr. Parker, wondering about his past, his struggles, and why he kept so much of himself hidden. One Friday afternoon, as the office began to empty for the weekend, Emma received an unexpected message from Mr. Parker. Would you like to join me for dinner tonight? I'd like to talk about something important. Her heart skipped a beat. Dinner? What could he want to talk about? She quickly typed a response, agreeing to meet him at the restaurant he suggested. That evening, they sat across from each other in a quiet, elegant restaurant. Mr. Parker was more relaxed than usual, and for the first time, Emma saw him without the weight of his usual business persona. He seemed human, just like her. They talked about work, of course, but also about life, about their pasts. Mr. Parker opened up more than Emma had ever expected. He spoke of his struggles, of the pressure he had faced in building his empire, and how, over the years, he had lost touch with the simple things in life. As he spoke, Emma realized how much they had in common. They were both people who had started with nothing, who had fought their way to where they were now. I never really had anyone to talk to about all of this, he admitted, his voice low. I've always kept my guard up, afraid that if I let anyone in, I'd lose everything I've worked for. Emma's heart went out to him. She understood that fear all too well. You don't have to carry it all alone, she said gently. I think it's time we both started living for something more than just survival. Mr. Parker looked at her, his expression shifting as he processed her words. For the first time, there was a softness in his eyes that Emma had never seen before. Maybe you're right, he said quietly. Maybe it's time to let go of the past and look toward the future. Emma smiled, a sense of peace settling in her chest. She had come so far, and now, it seemed, so had he. The evening ended on a quiet note, but Emma left with a feeling of hope. For the first time, she felt like she wasn't the only one carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders. Maybe, just maybe, they could both let go of their fears and step into a future filled with possibilities. Months passed, and Emma found herself in a place she had never thought possible. She was no longer the girl who had once struggled to get by. She had built a life, a career, and even a sense of purpose. The company had flourished under her leadership, and the respect she had earned from her colleagues was something she had never imagined she could achieve. Still, despite her success, something had shifted between her and Mr. Parker. Their dinners together had become more frequent, and the bond between them had grown stronger. She was no longer just the employee he had taken a chance on. They were friends, even if there was an unspoken connection between them that neither had acknowledged yet. Emma had learned that Mr. Parker's past was filled with its own struggles, things he had kept hidden from the world. He had built an empire, yes, but it had come at a cost. He had learned to rely only on himself, but he had also learned how to let go, how to trust again. And through their conversations, Emma had come to realize that she, too, had to let go of her fears and embrace what life had to offer. One evening, as she was leaving the office, she received a call from Mr. Parker. Emma, can we talk? I need to tell you something important. His voice came through the phone, calm but serious. Emma's heart skipped a beat. Of course, what's going on? She asked, concern creeping into her voice. Meet me at the park, he said. I'll be waiting for you. The park. The place where it had all started for her. Emma didn't know what to expect, but she couldn't ignore the feeling that something was about to change. She quickly made her way there, her mind racing with possibilities. When she arrived, she saw Mr. Parker sitting on the same bench where they had once talked about life, about their struggles, their dreams. The setting sun cast a warm glow over the city, the lights soft and golden. Emma walked up to him, her heart beating faster with each step. What's going on, Mr. Parker? She asked, trying to read his expression. He stood up as she approached, his face unreadable. Emma, I've been thinking a lot about everything, he began, his voice quieter than usual. About us. About what we've been through and what we've built together. And I've realized something. I want to share my life with you. Not just as a colleague, not just as a mentor, but as someone who cares about you deeply. Emma's breath caught in her throat. Was he saying what she thought he was saying? I know this might sound unexpected, he continued, but I've realized that I don't want to hide behind my walls anymore. I don't want to keep you at a distance. Emma's heart swelled in her chest, emotions flooding through her. She had never expected this. She had always admired Mr. Parker from afar, but she hadn't dared to imagine that he might feel the same way. Mr. Parker, she started, her voice shaky. He smiled gently, taking a step closer to her. Emma, you've shown me what it means to truly live. You've reminded me that there's more to life than work and success. I want to be part of your life, if you'll have me. Emma stood there, her mind swirling with the weight of his words. She had never thought she would find love in a place like this, in a situation like this. But as she looked at him, as she saw the sincerity in his eyes, she realized that maybe this was exactly where she was meant to be. I don't know what to say, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. He reached out, gently taking her hand in his. You don't have to say anything yet, he said softly. I just wanted you to know how I feel. Take your time. Emma's heart was racing. She had spent so many years building walls around herself, afraid of trusting others, afraid of being hurt. But now, standing here, with Mr. Parker's hand in hers, she realized that the walls were starting to crumble. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was living. I've never been good at this, she said quietly, looking up at him. But I think I'm ready. I think I want to give this a chance. Mr. Parker's smile deepened, and for the first time, Emma saw a sense of peace in his eyes, a peace she had never seen before. I'm glad, he said softly. They stood there for a long moment, just holding hands, watching as the sun set behind the city. The future felt wide open, full of possibilities. For the first time in her life, Emma didn't feel like she was just waiting for things to change. She was ready to embrace whatever came next. She had learned to trust again, and in doing so, she had found something even more precious, someone to share her life with. And as the night fell, with the stars shining above them, Emma knew that this was only the beginning of a new chapter. A chapter where she could finally be herself, and where she didn't have to face life's challenges alone. With Mr. Parker by her side, she was ready to take on the world.